Right, guys. Happy belated Father's Day. To those who can see this video, pretty much once again, yes, happy belated Father's Day. I know that this platform, this forum is one where we as women discuss issues. So a lot of people tend to think, well, why are you saying happy belated Father's Day if I am a woman? And I think, to me, when I look at it, if you are a woman and you have a partner and you have a significant other, then that means you celebrated Father's Day with that particular individual. And if peradventure you happen to be a single parent, then that makes you the mother and the father in your home. And I really believe that. I mean, biologically, I may just be a mother to my child, but if I look at the role that I play, I'm also playing the role of a mother and father. So if you are a single parent, this message, this conversation applies to you just as much as it does apply to the men in our lives. I actually wanted to talk about this topic, I think, during Mother's Day, but I made a decision not to talk about it because I was like, I don't want to be like I'm trying to spoil the day for everybody. I was reading last week, and there's a document, a survey that says about 91% of couples struggle discussing money. And I thought to myself, you know what, this is absolutely crazy. And it is our reality, though. How is it that you can get to a stage in a relationship where somebody gets to see the inner you, they get to see you completely naked, they get to be in your innermost private parts, but you can't discuss money with them? If anything, I would think money is basic. And so I thought to myself, if I was in that situation where we were celebrating Father's Day and I had my partner next to me, you know, what are the things I would want to discuss with them about money? And so I was thinking of how would I even package it? It's a bit of a difficult conversation to have. So I started rehearsing it in my head, and I was like, darling, you play such a significant role in our lives and the lives of our children. Can we talk about what financial provisions have been made for the family as a whole and for our future as a couple? And to be honest, we need to have those conversations. We don't have a choice. If I look at some of the female groups that I'm a part of, the questions women are asking, where they're being denied money by men, or they don't even know what financial provision is there for them and the children if anything happens to the partner, or even if nothing happens to the partner. In 2020, that's not situations we can afford to pretend and be ignorant about. That study that said 91% of couples have trouble discussing money or struggle discussing money was pretty much, also on the flip side, talked about how it is only couples that are intentional in regards to how they plan financially that are actually succeeding. So what that told me is that unless as a couple you have two people who are basically intentional about their conversation with money, about what they plan to do with money, then if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I started as well to think about certain examples, of people I've seen who've been successful with money. Like, I have a friend of mine who's in sales, and him and the wife, they're millionaires today, but they were not millionaires before. And he said that every 3 months, they as a family, they sit down and have a conversation about money. They talk about, in January, they talk about what are our plans, what are our goals for the next 12 months. And then they sit down, they look at the budget together as a family. And then 3 months down the line, they review, they check in with each other to say, where are we with regards to these goals? Are we meeting them? So it's not two people living in a house doing their own thing financially, but only meeting when it comes to the bedroom. So if anything, if you're married and you're having children with somebody, those are things you need to discuss. In fact, it's your legal right as far as I'm concerned. If I can have children with you, and if you're willing to have children with me, then we should at least be able to talk about things that go beyond me putting food on the table and you paying school fees. There's a bigger picture. If you look at the Bible, for example, we have Abraham, we have Isaac and Jacob, we have Jews today. They're still passing money, to each other. down to generations. And here we are, many people are still struggling just to make it. We're always starting from square one. So as a mother, of a child, and as a, somebody who's a wife or a partner, I think you actually have that responsibility to talk to your partner and say, hey, what are we planning for these children? Or even if it's not about the children, should anything happen to me? Should anything happen to you? What's the plan? Where are we going with the future? So I was, funny enough, talking to somebody on a particular group, and we were discussing about life insurance. And this lady in Zimbabwe says to me, yes, life insurance is good if you live in a stable economy. And I thought to myself, well, does dying happen only in a stable economy? Does the devil actually care whether there's poverty or things are good? It's 2020, and I think we need to move on beyond that situation where if somebody dies, people are passing around a plate and asking for a contribution. We can do better than that. If they're doing that, let's do that as a surplus. Let's not make it a situation where somebody becomes dependent on it and says, oh, unless I get that money, I can't I can't bury my father, or I can't bury my mother. So especially for those of us who have partners, or those of us who are playing the role of mom and dad, I think one thing that's really important to consider here is that they are fathers or parents who are professionals at working extra hours. We do the extra hours to pay for extracurricular activities, to provide piano lessons and stuff like that, but we're missing something there. In 2020, it should be more than that. People talk about spending quality time with children. Sometimes it's also about not even just being there in the house whilst you're watching TV, but engaging. When I look at my parents, the things I learned about money came from my parents. I remember seeing my mother budget, writing down a list of things she would pay for. Through that, I learned to budget. And I remember each month my dad would come home and say to my mom, the money's in the bank account. Can you do a budget? And let's see what we're sorting out. But we find that a lot of our children, they don't know how to do that anymore. And a lot of times they don't know that because the father plays a significant role in that, but the father is busy doing the extra hours in the workplace. So what we end up with are children who know how to spend the money, but they don't know how to save the money. They do not know how to grow the money. And so then when you die and you leave them £1 million, in the space of 1 year, the money is gone. And then you think these children are wasteful. But what we did is we didn't completely empower them. What we did is we earned the money, we showed them how to spend it, but we didn't show them how to preserve it and to grow it. Jews are teaching their children how to earn the money, how to spend it, how to preserve it, and how to grow it. And at the same time, if you think about it, a lot of us are saying things like, oh, I don't have enough money. There isn't enough money in the budget. Can't you see what's going on, this COVID-19? To be honest with you, there is never, ever going to be enough money in the budget because there will always be a problem. If it's not somebody dying back home, it's maybe the car needing servicing, all sorts of different things. If you can just make that commitment to yourself to say, hey, you know what? I'm just putting aside even £50 a month for the sake of my children. It is gonna go a long way. We talk about investing, we talk about all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, your first responsibility as a parent is not just feeding and clothing children and making sure they go to school and do homework. We've gone beyond that. They've been doing that since 1920. Move up to the next level. Even if you are somebody who sells tomatoes and you keep your money in your bra, have something that you put aside and just say, this is for my children, so that even if your child gets a scholarship, you don't have to have the whole village contribute towards the education of your child. And sometimes when I look at skill sets, developing skill sets in our children, like we look at a lot of rich people back home and we think, oh, this person died and then their wealth disappeared just like that. And then people spread rumors and say, oh, they were into witchcraft, they acquired their wealth in a diabolical manner. Actually, sometimes that's not even the issue. I think the issue in many cases is the parent was so busy acquiring the wealth, they never showed the children how they acquired the wealth. They never took the time to teach the children how to preserve the wealth. And worst of all, they never took the time to teach the children how to multiply the wealth and to pass on that information, to say to their child, as I've left you this money, you have a responsibility to pass it forward. Why am I saying this today of all days? Because the Bible clearly tells us that a father leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Yesterday was Father's Day. So what inheritance is your partner planning to leave to his children's children? And since you are the Eve in that relationship, and given that Eve was brought into the situation as a helpmeet, if your partner is not good with money, then that's where you balance him. You're the Eve, right? You don't just sit down and fold your hands and be like, whatever will happen, just because he doesn't know how to add and subtract. That's where you come in, right? You're the helpmeet. God designed you to meet a need. So we really need to start doing that. Because at the end of the day, if I look at my parents, yesterday I was thinking of my father and the role he played, and I was really humbled by it. And it really challenged me, because if my father and my mother, who did not go to university, could sit down and plan financially for us and our future as their children, then me here living in England, I don't have any excuse. It's just, it's about a commitment. It's about making a decision. It's like tithing. Once you decide to do it, the devil will give you 101 reasons why you can't do it. But once you set your mind to it and you're like, you know what, I'm not moving from this goalpost. This £50 a month, I'm going to save it for my children. So that when my child needs to go to university, I don't have to use a credit card to buy them duvet covers and buy them pots and pans. It's really uplifting when our children see us as well as parents going the extra mile for them. And these kids, they're a lot more aware than we think they are. My son is in high school, and when he started high school, they started teaching them on financial education. They were teaching them on their rights as children. The other day, do you know what he says to me? He says to me, Mom, what financial provision have you made for me for my future? And I was like, whoa, I was taken aback, because, I'm not expecting a 16-year-old to say that, but those are the days we're living in. Children in this country are relying on the bank of mom and dad to raise down payments for properties. So what that means is that you're going to go through a stage where your children are in their 20s and in their 30s and they're getting married. You'll be invited to weddings. And in those weddings, you'll see parents give down payments to their children. And you're going to sit down and look at it and be like, oh, they're so lucky. But you will conveniently forget that when you had the opportunity, you were walking up and down the high street, buying all sorts of garbage that you never wore. Or you will conveniently forget that when you were supposed to be saving for your children, anytime somebody had a headache in Zimbabwe, you would take that money and send it to Zimbabwe. I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty. I've been there. But what I'm trying to push here is an angle of balance. Do for those people at home, do for yourself, and do for your children. Those are the three factors you should be carrying along with you. Thereby, that way you're setting an example. So really, in summary of everything that I've said here, is that if you're in a relationship, don't be the 91% that doesn't discuss money with their partner. Be the 9% that the studies are talking about, who sit down and discuss the budget with their partner and who also discuss future financial goals. And then secondly, if you are a parent, lone parent, husband in the house, maybe there's 3 parents in the house, I don't know what the situation is. Have a plan, even if it's just £50 a month. Put that aside for your children. If you're not working and you don't have it, use the child benefit money. It's not your money anyways. So once you get used to it and you're like, you know what, this money, once it arrives, I'm putting it in a savings for your child. Before you know it, you'd have completely forgotten about it. You're not going to be budgeting what's not meant for you. So at the end of the day, take the time out as well to educate your children in terms of money. Sometimes you don't have to be a genius. When my son was in his first year in high school, I gave him money and I said, this is your allowance for the whole month. And I said to him, this £100, do a budget for me. I want to see how you're going to use it. I had to start teaching him how to budget for his monthly pass, how to break the money down so that he would have enough to buy school meals. There were times he used the money before that. Once or twice I gave him a pass and topped him up. After that, I said, you know what? You're on your own. It's like if you're working a job and if you spend all your money before payday, guess what? You're going to be drinking water for 2 weeks until payday. So sometimes you do have to be cruel to be kind as a parent. It's not that I don't love my son or I don't want to give him the world, but at the end of the day, I could see that if I kept on topping up the excess expenditure, I was just creating a vicious cycle. So at the end of the day, like I said, if you're a single parent, you're the mother, you're the father in your home, so let's do right. And if you are, as a woman, dating a man who doesn't look after his children, you need to ask yourself what you're doing in that relationship. Because are you happy in your situation that somebody, some deadbeat, is not available to your child, and you now want to participate in making sure that somebody else becomes a deadbeat who's also not available to their children? We need to hold each other accountable as a community and stop playing the victim role. So guys, thank you so much. If you have any feedback, I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you all next time. Take care. Bye-bye.